Okay, everybody, to order. We have a short time today. I'm going to ask the chairman of the task force to go through our order today and what we need to accomplish. We will have a closed session, remember, at right around 10 o'clock. That's a very important executive session, and then return, so don't leave anybody. We're going to return for some important work on next steps. Curator Chapman.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So the first thing we're going to do is go over a revised vision statement. I think everyone has a copy in front of them. So we're going to go through that. We're going to finish our discussion of our guiding principles that we had started yesterday. At 10 o'clock, we're going to vote on the board resolution that I asked you guys to take a look at that and see if you had any questions on it. Time will be tight, so we really need to push through to get that resolution voted on at 10 o'clock. So we're going to take a break immediately following the passage of the resolution. We're going to talk about next steps. At 11 o'clock, we're going to talk about our hot topics as well, and we plan on adjourning at noon. So let's get started on the vision statement. Terry, do you have anything to add?
No, you did it all.
Okay. So any thoughts on the vision statement, the new and revised vision statement?
Moon, we want to talk about the revision?
Yes, the vision statement that you see up on the screen and also that was handed out earlier, there is a strong consensus for the words that are being used, except for the two that you see, whether to use the word prosperity or success. And someone mentioned to me that prosperity was the original language that was used in the Moral Act. Well, I tried to look for it in the Moral Act yet last night and I couldn't find it. There's also a connotation of opulence, luxury, financial well-being that we probably don't want to connotate. And so we selected another word for your consideration, which is success. So if you can take a look at the second vision statement, and if you can let us know what you think about that. I mean, I'm sure that some of us would like to do a little more wordsmithing, but I believe that this really does capture what our vision should be. It's aspirational. And so any thoughts, comments? Curator Bernchick? Yes.
Is there a reason why it's capitalized or?
No, it's not. I mean, it should be lowercase.
All right.
Good catch.
Is there a reason why it's blue?
To highlight, yes. Curator Bernchick?
I want to hear what others think.
Yeah. Others?
Yeah, I guess I would say with regards to success, that can have a different meaning for anybody, and so that's why it's more inclusive, I think.
Yes. That's right. We talk about student success, faculty success, citizen success.
I like success.
Success?
I also like success.
Does anybody want to make an argument for prosperity? Because if you don't, let's roll and go.
Good. Good.
Hearing no one willing to speak up for the old-time word of prosperity, I am going to assume that we have adopted a vision statement, which is the second version with success. Is that right? Done.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Victory. Congratulations. Okay, next step. And as Daryl said, important to move expeditiously because the resolution is kind of the centerpiece of all of this. But the principles and guidelines. We've gotten as far as number 3. If we can, frankly, if we can do this in about 15 minutes, not having a vote on it today, so we don't have to wordsmith it, but perhaps bring it back in September following the input here and some conversation with the folks who helped put it together, if that works for you.
No.
Daryl?
We want to get through it today. I mean, that's the ultimate goal.
You'd like to get it done today?
I want to get it done.
And it
Does
works?
anyone
Okay.
I really do believe we can get it done today. I would hate to push it off to September.
Okay.
So we want a lively discussion, and if we can't get through it, we can't get through it, but I would really like to get through it today and work the best that we can.
15 minutes or so, is that the goal also?
15 minutes.
No,
We've
just,
got until, looks like we
no, I
got,
mean, but we still need time for the
They
resolution.
may want to wordsmith I hope not, but the resolution. I don't want to.
no, I don't, we have the resolution at 10 o'clock. It seems like we got an hour, and I'm not sure where
Okay,
15 minutes
okay,
fits in. Let's
okay.
just push through.
Well, fine, okay, we'll see where we wind up. Do you have a copy of it in front of you, either electronically or Hard copy? Okay. John, if I recall correctly, we were,
I don't have a copy in front of me because I'm not sure what you're now referring to.
okay, there's that section called Principles
Oh, yeah.
and Guidelines. That's it.
Yep.
We'll give people a chance to get it out and take a look at it.
Everyone have that in, does everyone have that in front of you? If you need an extra copy, maybe you can share with your neighbor if you don't have one.
And yesterday, people had the opportunity to comment on the first two sections of it, but that doesn't mean if you want another bite out of that apple and had thoughts, second thoughts, third or fourth thoughts, we'll welcome comments on it. The first two, I'll just pause here for a minute while you look at it, and then we'll go to where we left off, which was the third one. Okay.
I
The
have a comment on the title,
Go ahead.
and it gets back to the question about how binding is this going to be. So the title, and let's take away the Roman numeral 2 part.
Right.
Guiding principles and guidelines, redundancy.
That's true.
And if you changed it to recommended principles and guidelines, and if we adopted it, then it would not be law or a CRR. That's the thought, and maybe what we do is come back to that.
Excellent thought. Originally, it was two documents, and that word should have been dropped off. Yeah, thank you for catching that. Recommend. And if I may, just for your consideration, if it's recommended or something like that, that, to my mind, creates some flexibility, and the people who have to live this thing can make some adjustments when and if it makes sense to them. Thank you. So in that case, do you want to go to the third one, which is balancing central authority and institutional distinction? Remember, these are intended to be not strict rules, but highly recommended expectations. John?
I thought you asked, maybe I misunderstood, if we had any changes on the first one.
Well, I did, but then I wasn't hearing anything.
Okay. On the second one, I do.
Okay, go ahead then.
Okay, okay.
Go to the second one.
Okay.
Collaboration and mutuality.
Yeah.
That one?
So, let's see, under chancellors, there's some redundancy between A and B as to candid relationship and candid advice.
Yeah. Not some, quite a bit.
So you could either eliminate one or pull
Maybe drop
out the
B.
first one.
Yeah.
I think candid relationship is there's a little difference there between candid relationship and candid advice, right? Moon, what do you think? Chancellors, we're in section 2, collaboration and mutuality under chancellors. A and B, John said there's redundancy between A and B.
As to the word candid.
And my point was candid relationship and candid advice are distinct, but maybe.
The Jesuit in me says the advice falls under the relationship.
It's not important. I withdraw the suggestion.
What?
I withdraw the suggestion.
Oh, okay.
Let's ask the chancellors.
See Alex and Chris kibitzing. Do you guys have a take on that particular one about the offering advice to the president, whoever that might be? Offering candid advice.
No, actually,
I think it's a hell of an idea.
Yeah, that's fine. We were actually stuck, we were looking at a different one, sorry. If you were ready to hear a different one, but.
Sorry to interrupt you. Anything else on 2?
Terry, did we do anything to it? I'm trying to keep track. Did we do anything? Did we make any edits?
No, John withdrew his suggestion, so we'll just leave it. Thank you. Yeah.
Terry?
No.
On number 2, I like the first paragraph, and I think if we could adhere to that, the idea that we're going to work together, collective results that cannot be achieved individually,
Yeah,
and are committed to each other and our mutual success. I think committed to each other and our mutual success really ought to be the keystone of what we're trying to do.
ties into your vision in some respects that you just endorsed a few minutes ago. Yep. Yep.
Terry, since we are looking at it at that level, under the president, D, it says exercises care for the chancellor's
Yeah,
authority.
yeah.
Exercises respect for the chancellor's authority? Is that what you mean by care?
That might be a better word. Let's see if anybody else, we had something else in there
That's what I'm trying to
originally
figure
working
out.
through this, and we changed it because it wasn't quite right, and care didn't seem, it almost has a medical quality to it.
How about just say respects?
That's good.
Instead of just
chancellor's authority.
exercises, but. We hear, any else, is that copacetic with,
That's what you mean. That's it.
yeah,
Same-
what's wrong with
same
a little
meaning.
bit of respect, as the great Aretha Franklin would remind us.
I think we have consensus on respects. Respect.
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Okay?
Anything else?
Let me just underscore for the Chancellor's C, support UM system initiatives, especially when they're controversial. How does that play? Chris?
To me, personally, I think it's unnecessary, but I would just leave it at support the president's leadership in UM system initiatives.
Okay.
I realize it's in there for emphasis, but I would say the same thing. I'm not sure why we need that in there.
Okay. Actually, just a tiny bit of history. I think it was in the AGB thing originally, which meant that the system heads sitting in the room writing this thing were feeling the wounds probably. Okay, so let's drop that. Beginning with especially.
One other thought, I would point out that under President A, we used the term campus leaders. We had taken the word campus out of organization, even though there was some thought that we would leave it in with a small c, so that, because everybody's going to use it anyway. So I don't have an objection to it being here, but I just pointed out that if you don't ever want to see campus in what we're approving, then this is probably the only place that it appears.
Should that be university, capital U?
Well, then it would be, it could be and the leaders of the universities, because
Yeah,
they're actually
yeah.
referring to work. But I'm happy with campus. I'm going to continue to use it in my lingo.
If we want to have a different vocabulary going forward, let's drop it so that we don't sort of perpetuate that.
Okay.
In even a little way. Anything else on? I do notice that, like, curators tend to talk about the president and the chancellor on these things, and chancellors tend to talk about the president. Alex, here's an opportunity
I was
to
going
do
to talk
that.
about the chancellors. D,
Okay.
explore meaningful collaboration with other universities. Does that, we want to say other system universities specifically, or is that just any university?
What do you think?
I had that as a question as well.
It's about
Well,
mutuality of the member universities in the system.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. Obviously, they should explore partnerships beyond the system as well.
So my question is, should we qualify it with system universities? That's all that really I'm asking.
Yeah.
Put the word system in there.
System universities.
Okay.
Yep.
Or,
UM system.
I think we've been using UM
UM
system
system
universities.
universities,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
that'll work.
Anybody else have a take on this, whether it directly involves your position today or not? Who knows where you'll be tomorrow? University of Wisconsin did something like this after they had some considerable turmoil with the Madison campus, and that's partly where this idea came from, so it's got a noble heritage. Okay, balancing central authority and institutional distinction, ready for that? Chris.
All right, I'm ready for that. central authority is sort of completely independent of institutional distinction. I mean, if you're looking for flexibility or something like that instead of distinction, there can be central authority and still have lots of institutional distinctions.
I'm not sure I understand the point.
Flexibility instead of distinction.
Right.
Well, I think that's a different concept. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but where these are coming from are the geo-retreat, so this is kind of a way of taking, I think, 10 concepts from the geo-retreat and getting them down to 5 or 6. But the point at the geo-retreat and the point at the task force at various points in time was to talk about campus distinctiveness. So that's the reason for that word. I think flexibility is a little bit different concept, not that there's anything wrong with it, maybe it's better, but it's different than we've been talking about.
Could I ask a question to maybe get this started too? What do you mean by flexibility? And I'm not saying you're saying this, Chris, but what I have heard over the years is flexibility becomes equivalent to a lack of accountability. And I'm not saying that's what you mean. So I would like to know specifically
No, that has nothing to do with that.
What do you mean by flexibility?
I'm looking, what this does is this sets up kind of a false dichotomy, if you read this as it is. It assumes that central authority decreases institutional distinction.
May I argue, why does that seem that way to you?
Because if you're balancing the two, they're the opposite sides of a scale.
And I disagree completely. I believe one of the failures of higher education is its drive towards homogeneity because of the, quote, flexibility. And I believe we can actually increase the distinctiveness and differentiate more through some sort of vision of the president and the board. And I will say this is not just me saying this. I always hate to talk about Michael Crow. He has a whole chapter of that in his book. I also will say again that we all know every higher ed leader tends to want to move towards the same because it's risk-free, it helps advance their careers. And so if I could just push back, I believe we can drive more differentiation and more distinctiveness through a vision of the president and the board.
Well, and I disagree with that underlying premise of every higher ed leader, but we can talk about that.
Any other thoughts on that, one way or the other?
I think that's a really important issue. I'm happy because each of the 3 topics, the board, the president, and the chancellors, recognize distinctive strengths. And as long as that's in there, I think that covers the question of the uniqueness and the distinctive programs that the campuses have. So flexibility to me would be nice, but as long as we're recognizing those distinctive strengths and everybody, each of those 3 components are charged with that to me covers the base.
Let me ask, good point, John. Let me ask if everyone has the unique characteristics and top programs from each campus, does everybody have a copy of that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because that was part of this exercise too, was to actually inform us of what your top programs were and unique features. So.
I would mention, Molly mentioned to me yesterday that he's still fine-tuning the UMKC. Am I right about that? And so the draft that came in last week is not quite complete. So before you publish, I think you're going to submit a further draft. Am I right about that, Molly?
Yeah, the things that we submitted were, I think we were told they would be placeholders and that we can work with them a little bit longer. And I think given that we're still discussing these, we should have the time to go back and modify and make sure that what we put forth as institutional missions and visions are in compliance with what we're putting down here for the system.
And I would
Can we
hope,
approve it in principle that that would be the way we're going to solve for it, even if it's not quite done? It's a placeholder?
That's my sense, frankly, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, some kind of endorsement would be helpful, but with the recognition there'll be not fundamental, but adjustments for accuracy and that kind of thing there. John?
I would hope that each campus would take a final look and look at each other's listings. Some are 1 page and list 8 or 10 programs.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Others are 3 pages and list 3 dozen programs. So I'd just say the chancellors maybe ought to get on the telephone before you, you know, and have, so are you covering all your bases, or are you really picking out distinctive ones? And if you've missed any distinctive ones, add to it. So that's my personal view. I'll be quiet.
Let me just add a thought in here. A standard and often accurate criticism of systems is that it's one size fits all when it comes to policies. And the advantage of the distinctiveness piece is that it sort of introduces the idea, sure, we need a lot of uniformity where it makes sense, but what works for S&T in some instances might be different than KC and certainly than, so that frankly leads me to kind of like the distinct, and you'll notice the word respect is in this thing 3 or 4 times, which also puts that forward. Alex?
I'm sorry to go back to Chris's comments and also Curator Steelman's comments. I think after listening to both of them, the balancing part is what I think is creating an issue, because what people are seeing is that if it's a balance, and maybe it's the engineering mind, if it's a balance, if you're all central authority, then you have no distinctiveness. If you have all distinctiveness, you have no central authority. If we can change it to something like, and I don't know the right wording, but exercising central authority while optimizing institutional distinctiveness. Something like that.
Yeah, good idea.
Terrific.
Do we have consensus on that?
Can you repeat that, Alex?
Exercising central authority while optimizing institutional distinction. Something like that.
Moon, does that work for a
Trying to
president?
think.
For now, anyway.
Exercising central authority while optimizing institutional distinctiveness?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
It gives the opportunity where you recognize that there are times when you might want to be more distinctive at a particular campus, and you have to control that at the system level so that you don't have everybody trying to do the same thing.
How about exercising central authority, and this may not be the right word, because is the goal to optimize institutional distinctiveness? And what is the benefit of that?
Well, I was actually reacting to Chairman Steelman's comments about there are times when we might want to think of becoming even more distinctive on each one of the universities.
Right. So I'm going to try this. It may not be the right word. Exercising central authority, recognizing institutional distinctiveness.
You know, the term that's currently in there is distinctive strengths.
Distinctive strengths, yeah.
And that's, I think that may be important to have strengths, because you could be distinctive and it may be a weakness.
Sure. So maybe there's another word we can use instead of recognizing, but it's not to optimize institutional. Oh, I see what you're saying.
No, it could be. It depends.
It could be.
So in the distinctive strengths, that's a good one.
That's
optimize. Yeah, that would work.
That's how I view that, and I view that as a broader diversity working collectively, which adds strength to what we're trying to do.
Are we discussing the title?
Yes.
Title.
Yes, we are.
Because the language right below that seems to capture the things that the chancellors are talking about.
Well, but can I say what I really like about Alex's suggestion is I think that it is a recognition that we are going to differentiate in the ways that are best for the state and for the university as a whole, but also for the 4 universities. So you can play with the words, but as I understand the spirit of what you two put together, I think it is really I think it is the way we have to go.
So Steve Owens reminded us, look below the title and the sentence that describes it, and I think that captures what we're saying. So take a look. Do you see it, David?
Yeah.
And I don't think, and Steve,
I'd actually I'm sorry, I'm talking to
Steve, yeah. So Steve, would you recommend, since that sentence, if you guys deem that sentence to be adequate underneath the title, it's probably not, we probably don't need to change the title. Can you agree with that? Does the sentence capture the spirit of what you guys are saying?
I think the bigger issue is just the word balancing.
Right.
And so that's the line below,
Steve. If you got rid of balance in the line below, it
Strengths.
And then the title.
perfectly
Yeah.
captures it.
Moon has a suggestion, I think.
Oh, I do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Exercising central authority to optimize institutional strengths? Strengths, not distinction, but strengths.
What if we just, we're hung up on balance. What if we, in the language below the title, if we just strike the word balance in, would that capture what you're
Yeah, I
looking
think balance is.
So it would read, exercising central authority that recognizes and respects institutional distinctiveness, appropriate deference, and accountability.
Do we have a consensus? I really like the optimizing, frankly, but is there a
the title,
consensus?
for the title.
Yeah, for the title.
I like optimized.
Can we just get agreement on the?
The title's changed?
Yes.
Right.
That'll change.
John, what do you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like
What
we
did
got
we
it.
just do?
And are we on institutional strengths?
Yeah.
I like all that.
Yeah.
I
So
like optimizing
Said it,
strengths
you
too.
it
said
seems like our title should be exercising central authority to optimize institutional strengths.
We're in agreement on optimize. How about if we just strike
I thought
balancing?
I think we just were in agreement on optimize. Did anybody disagree with optimize?
All right, let me share it again. Exercising central authority to optimize institutional strengths as the title. Remove the word balancing. Any concerns? Okay. And then the next sentence then, we should remove balancing.
Correct.
Good.
Yes.
Yes.
If you look at the four bullets under board and the several under presidents, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe there are more respects in there. So in terms of getting at that tension between central control and the individual strengths and identity and the institutions, it's writ pretty large in the bullets. Comments on any of those bullets underneath the title?
Just a question to the board on A. Do you need regional in front of the obligations? Because nothing else really has those kinds of modifiers.
I like it because
Okay.
when you guys gave us your, unique characteristics, I thought it was great how you guys serve the Rolla market, how UMSL serves the St. Louis market, how UMKC serves Kansas City's market. And some of those things were pretty unique. So and that's a regional obligation, and you guys, I think, presented them as regional obligations.
It is, but there are obligations beyond those, and I'm just, I didn't want to imply a limitation
Okay.
of obligations to regional ones.
Institutional missions, including.
Marcy had a good suggestion, Chris. He said to put the word including in front of regional obligations.
Sure wouldn't.
Moon, Moon, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, in fact, that's really good because those who are in Kansas City will have a lot of regional needs for that region that you would have to meet. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with that. Including, Chris, is that okay?
Yep, good comment, Chris.
Other comment? Yes, yeah, Rhonda.
Just a detail, letter C has the word campus in it again,
Sure, okay. Which bullet is that
under
under?
board C.
Word C.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, under President B, creates incentives for collaboration across system universities.
Yeah, a little more specificity is not bad.
Under the board D, it's, in the way that we've defined it, I think it's fine to say avoids micromanagement of the system, period.
Yes. I don't know who invited the fly to this meeting, but he seems to be visiting everybody.
And to be consistent, on the Chancellor's C, where it says system, I would just put the in front of it.
Yeah. Any other concerns, comments, suggestions on any of the other bullets?
So
some ways
let me
these
go,
seem-
let me go to Chancellor's B. We use capital U University. It seems like we're using system a little bit. We're using big U, and I know they mean the same thing, but it seems like we're using system more. But champion the distinctive strengths of their university while supporting
Yeah.
system priorities instead of university.
Yeah. Some ways these changes seem minor, but they are helping to redefine a culture.
Yeah, put for C instead of system, system under chancellors.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys? And we can move on.
Hearing none. Number 4, collaborative decision-making. Subtitle, informed decisions and actions based on collaboratively developed strategic directions and planning. Then a series of bullets emphasizing strategy.
Board D, we say university systems. That should be system, systems. Right, Steve?
Citizens of Missouri that belong here in Board D, Delta.
Dave, this is the citizens of Missouri appears again in D. Do we just say the needs of Missouri?
I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
And would that be the same sentence? Would that then be systems strategic goals?
Yeah.
Yes.
For the president, B, works with the chancellors. Is that a term that's congenial to you? Champions system strategic goals and works with chancellors to develop university-specific goals. Tom, take on it?
It works, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'd say for President C, take out universities and do systems.
Yeah.
So are we recognizing, this would be the place for, I think, us to discuss this, that in the future that we will continue to have strategic planning bottom up with the each of the 4 universities doing strategic plans that are that the president then reviews and molds into a system strategic plan, as opposed to the system bypassing the campuses and just having a strategic plan that's top down. Is this a place to reflect on that and make sure that we've captured that there will be a process? I think that's an important question for us to ask, and then make sure that it's captured.
Let me tee it up and see if this is helpful at all. One model, in a sense, the traditional model in some ways. The campus, individual universities develop a strategic plan, and someone at the system level finds a way to cobble it all together under a kind of umbrella concepts. Been there, done that. The other is I'll call it the New Jersey model for the moment. The strong strategic directions are set at the top, and others need to get aligned with it. The third model is let's work together on this thing and find a way as the plans are being developed, both ends of the spectrum. They come together in a way that makes sense. Hunches, you guys would want to be in the middle, right?
I think the model that we use is a combination.
Yeah.
We started out the strategic planning at the system by holding a GEO retreat last year in June, where we identified the 5 Missouri compacts. And based on the compacts, we shared that with the curators at the retreat last year. And then we also shared that with the IFC, the student organizations, as well as the staff organizations. So we laid out as part of our strategic plan the big critical areas in which we need to make an impact. And then based on that, the campuses or the universities were able to develop their strategic plan using their unique strengths to achieve the goals in student success, research, and so forth. So, John, we do plan to follow that model because it has to be collaborative. Otherwise, it just sits on a shelf.
What do you think, John?
I think that's the way it ought to be done.
Yeah.
That's historically different than how it was done 5 years ago, which nobody really understood, at least on the board. Have we captured that here sufficiently?
Responses to John's question?
It seems that,
Or is it inconsistent?
it seems
with-
that, excuse me, it seems,
Alex, no, please go ahead.
Oh,
You have Rick over
I'm
there.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Rick.
it seems that we addressed that in A, under the chancellor's responsibilities. That the chancellors do have the responsibility to lead campus-specific plans, and they roll up.
I think, John, I think what you're referring to is if we can have a statement in here that says the president and the UM system leaderships would develop a strategic plan that is developed in a collaborative way.
Yes.
So if we can somehow put that in there, I think we'll all be satisfied with that.
Yeah.
So let me think of some wording
Sure.
to that effect.
And related to that, I think maybe what John is noticing is in Chancellor's in B, it talks about ensure that plans align with the UM system strategic plan and priorities. If you read that without knowing the context, you would think that the strategic plan is developed first at the system and then we have aligned to that. And that's actually not what we've done.
Right.
So maybe it's just aligns with the UM system priorities. Right? Because you can set priorities and goals without having a specific plan on implementation, but certainly those can be set without having the plan in place.
That is, I think that is maybe the right place for it, and maybe over a break or something, you
Yeah.
will get language and come back.
Yeah, somewhere in the president and the chancellor's
Chancellors, yeah.
responsibilities.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's work on that.
Combination.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on number 4?
President, I have President D, this is just wordsmithing, state of Missouri, I think you just take state out, right, Steve? We've just been saying Missouri. Okay.
Anything else, either consistent wordsmithing or?
One sort of a clarification and a sort of refer back wordsmith here. Under the Chancellor's A, it talks about lead and overseeing developing plans specific to his or her university to meet performance goals. For the President in B, champions UM system strategic goals, works with the Chancellor to develop university-specific, and you could put the word performance after university-specific, so that that's where that connection goes back in.
I'm not, can you do that again?
I'm in B for the President,
Okay.
and adding the word performance in front of goals at the end of the sentence to refer to then the performance goals for the Chancellor's A.
More consistency between the two.
And it
Consistency
just sort
between
of,
the two.
I'm just trying to connect them and blend them better in a general way.
That's a good point.
Anything else on collaborative decision making?
Steve, does that make sense? Performance
Well,
goals.
again, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, Chancellor's A has performance goals, and then he wants it into President B, right?
Right.
For performance goals, same thing.
And I think it's quite likely that strategic plans would be broader than the performance goals of the chancellors. Whereas the chancellor's performance goals could be narrower and not include all the things in the strategic plan for their particular university.
What do you think, Moan?
So I see that section speaking more towards the development of the overall strategic plan for the university as opposed to performance goals for the university, for the chancellor.
That's the way I read it. but-
Yeah, that's the way I read it. And so how about university-specific strategic plans and goals? Yeah? Chris?
I'm fine. I'm not sure how many goals we would have that would not relate back to the strategic plan, but
Right, but the goals of the chancellors may be, I mean, there will be some goals for the university strategic plan that are beyond the goals of the chancellor, performance goals, because there are other people responsible. So this part is talking about the broader strategic plan goals.
which I assume that we are all held to.
Right, but then by limiting it just to the chancellors makes it restrictive.
Okay. Okay.
Anything else on this one? Darrell?
Are we on president or the whole,
Yeah, the whole thing, wherever something strikes you is worth talking about.
Under chancellors A, that reminds me of language that we didn't adopt in 20.1 or 030, I think, talking about values of the mind or developing the mind, which I think was back to maybe the Morale Act or something. I'm not sure what that really means.
I'm sorry, which one are you on, John?
Chancellors.
Under 4, collaborative decision-making still?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, core values, chancellors. A.
No,
We're not on core values.
We're not quite at core values yet.
Oh, we're not?
Yeah, I
Okay.
wouldn't mind being there, but I
No,
want to give people one more chance on this one.
My mind has moved
I
on,
was going to bring that up
which is a
anyway.
good thing.
Yeah, life of the mind is a Cardinal Newman-esque phrase.
So any more discussion on 4, collaborative decision-making?
Just one quick thing, actually, Chancellor's A, do we want that to be lead in overseeing and developing strategic plans?
Yeah, sure.
Just a minor change there. Lead in developing and implementing strategic plans.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else before we go to core values?
I have a note there.
Ready to
Well,
move ahead?
I can wait till we get down to chancellors. So I can wait till you come down to chancellors
Okay.
if you want. Start with board and so forth.
Number 5 then, core values. Respect, transparency, accountability, stewardship, purposeful self-assessment of performance, which appears a couple times in here, as you'll see. Just the literature defines board responsibility as primarily a fiduciary one, so that's why that's first. Some people question under President's E as an echo, rejuvenation. Is there a better word for that kind of staying vital and connected and professionally?
Where are you at, Terry?
President E, I'm just going to hit a couple and then people come up where they want, Darrell.
Did that come from the AGB? Did that come from AGB?
I'm not sure, Marcy. Not sure. I mean, much of this did, but I'm not sure if that word did.
Unusual.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, it's from the Latin.
Okay.
but,
No, I mean.
that's the
not-
point, yeah,
I know what
that's the point.
rejuvenation means. I don't know what the whole sentence means.
Oh,
Balances dedication to personal.
good
opportunity.
point.
I don't know
Yeah,
what
yeah,
that means.
yeah.
you know.
I don't see a reason to have E in there. I mean,
Yeah.
just drop it.
drop it.
Mona, you okay with that?
Confirm.
Yeah,
that, Chris?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And related to not knowing what things mean, in A, where it talks about developing for the president criteria and processes for annual and comprehensive 4 to 5 year evaluations of what?
Well, the
Performance
intention was that the
evaluations.
chancellor.
Individual performance or university?
No, individual.
Okay.
That was the intention anyway. I mean, one can debate whether you want to have it in here, but that was the original intent, was one of those, best practices out there is every 4 or 5 years, there's something that looks like a 360 on the chief executive of a campus and a system.
Are you guys okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we're fine with it. I just wanted to be talking about.
Yeah, performance evaluations.
Yeah.
Yeah. and then do the same thing in Chancellor's B.
Yeah. John, do you want to go back to the life of the mine business?
Yeah, that's an interesting concept.
It came from I think Steve's conversation with general officers and others. Was that somewhere?
Actually, it comes from an old CRR.
Oh.
It says that is the reason for the existence of the university.
And that was something, when we pulled out that particular sentence and put it into 20.030, we left it out. And as we went through that during the task force meeting, I pointed out to the task force that I left it out because I thought it was antiquated.
I think we should, I would vote to take it out too, John, and just say, accessible education that prepares our students for productive lives and careers. That values the life of the mind.
I think the idea is that student life is more comprehensive than the life of the mind.
Yeah.
Including the life.
Which one are we on?
Chancellor's A.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we taking out?
It says education that, delete after, okay, education that prepares our students for productive lives and careers.
Okay.
Yeah, life of the mind is kind of quaint. Yeah, yeah.
Should there be some way to evaluate the performance of the board and the president?
There is for the president, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm just looking at both of those again, Phil.
Under the board, under D, it says assess their own performance, but how can we assess our own performance? I guess we can, but.
Phil, I've assessed your performance, and I think it's pretty good.
And actually, that is one of our obligations, is to annually assess our own performance.
And we did it last year,
We
Phil,
did,
in
yeah, we did it.
December.
For the first time.
With Terry.
So can I go back to President C as well as Chancellor's D? Instead of using the word accepts the value of chancellors, how about respects the chancellor's input? And the same thing for Chancellor's D.
Back to Phil's question, though, looks to me like D, Delta, addresses the board issue, but I don't know that you have that in there for the president. The A looks like he's taking care of focusing on the chancellors there, correct? But not the president himself.
Terry, can we go back to President B?
B? Okay.
Recognizes both the importance of accountability and the special challenges that accompany the assertion of institutional leadership.
Yes.
So
Yeah, what does that
if you
mean?
can clarify what that means.
It's like the two E's that we just took out, I think.
Okay.
And assertion is also used under chancellor, assertion of leadership. I wonder if exercise is a better word than assertion.
I'll tell you what the idea was, but maybe it's not one that you want in there. In the so-called good old days when it was, frankly, growth and stability and not much change, the life of a president or a chancellor was still challenging, but probably not as challenging as when you're trying to change fundamental assumptions, ways of doing business, program array, all the stuff, frankly, has faced you guys for a while and will face you even more in the future. So it was trying to, and it didn't do it very well, introduce that idea of change leadership, frankly, and the opposition and the difficulties it entails. Chris?
I try to simplify things. So for me, I would just get rid of the assertion of and just the special challenges that accompany institutional leadership.
Good?
Okay. Fair enough. Moon, does that do it for you?
That clarifies it.
I think Phil had a good point that we didn't address here. Phil, you mentioned our evaluation of the president. You don't think that's in there? And maybe it's not?
I think it should be in there just like,
Which item
for
does
example,
that?
in dialogue with the president develops criteria and process for an annual and comprehensive evaluation. The same mechanism should be in the board for the president.
Yes.
Steve, is that in our collected rules? I can't recall.
It's in our bylaws. It's in our
We,
board.
I think
we're
we're under an obligation already to do that annually.
You could do it under
I think it's
B.
part of, in the bylaws under board responsibility.
So it would be redundant to put it in here, but do you want it in here for clarity, I guess?
And parallelism with the chancellors.
Okay.
Well, if we're going to put it in here, let's make sure we use the identical language. If we can find that.
Okay.
I have a
So that
question.
would be B under the board,
Yes.
to be parallel with B under chancellors.
Say that again, John, please.
B under the board, currently it talks about sets expectations. And so we want to make it consistent with the president doing the chancellors, which is under chancellors.
Okay.
So,
It's going to take some editing.
yeah.
I think Rick had something.
But let's
Yeah,
stay
Rick.
with what John said so we get a clarification. John, what change were you recommending, John?
The obligation of the board not only to set high expectations, but to evaluate your performance, which is your B, our B for you. And I think we've been talking about B under chancellors.
Yes, right. So
we
we
want
have to have,
consistency.
we have to have language in there that says that there will be annual and comprehensive performance evaluation of the president. Yeah.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, I thought we were going to fix that by adding language regarding the board's evaluation of the president, and that language will be consistent with what's already in the board bylaws.
Yes.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Under chancellors, parentheses, 4 to 5 year, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Usually those
Under
comprehensive
chancellors.
things are scheduled every 4 or 5 years at the chancellor's tenure, or the president's tenure in this case.
Terry referenced maybe a 360, meaning comprehensive as opposed to just.
Holding the board and,
Yeah.
Terry, sorry.
Maybe Marcia can elaborate on a comprehensive 360-like review as opposed to an annual review.
Can I comment on that? So academic leaders are typically evaluated beginning in their 5th year if they're going to be considered for renewal. We do that for deans, provosts, and chancellors. So it is a comprehensive 360 review that is performed.
My question is, you might be able to help us here, not necessarily on wording, but it's been our custom to evaluate, for the board to evaluate the president every year. I know that at a lot of institutions, they then have some sort of broader, more comprehensive evaluation every 4 to 5 years. We haven't done that, to my knowledge. So is that what you're suggesting by that language? Okay.
We haven't had the opportunity.
That's right.
People get out of Dodge before.
Terry. And
Oh, excuse me, Jim. Rick here was up, and then I'll come over to you.
I had a question, and that was just with respect to the whole section, whether we were focusing on evaluations and assessment from a performance evaluation only, or whether we were also looking at institutional performance. So evaluations against a set of performance goals, or institutional performance goals that are more operational in nature rather than individual performance in nature. It seemed from the core values, you could read into it from the accountability and self-assessment of performance, that you could read deeper into that it was more than just individual performance. But it sounds like the dialogue we're having mostly relates to individuals rather than performance of the organization?
It's a great question. Usually the board, when they do this kind of thing, says, where do they want the focus to be? Let's say the institution metrics are going in the wrong direction. Well, then that's, let's say relationships with the legislature are weak. Well, that might be so I guess my suggestion would be not to put it in here so much, because it depends on the context and the times, is what others say. Here's a standard list of what great presidents do. Frankly, I think that's less helpful than
Those
focusing
are,
on the context.
I mean, I guess I'm going back to Chris's comment. Those are interrelated.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, I think in terms of when I go up for an annual performance review, it's the institution as well as the individual, Rick. So I would say that it's sort of not stated explicitly, but you're really evaluating the institution. Also, in this cycle of 4 to 5 years, I think a lot of us at our institutions have 5-year comprehensive reviews of programs, departments. I mean, I think every aspect, including the faculty senate, undergoes a 5-year. So that sort of comprehensive 360 whatever is not unusual, at least at a lot of the institutions. So the 4 to 5 is much more comprehensive than the annual.
Jim?
In the language that we use on campus for our dean evaluations, year 1, 2, 3, and 4 are referred to as formative evaluations, or the first 3, and then year 4 is a summative evaluation, which is the more, and that may be a way of capturing the intent of a more comprehensive 360 review in year 4 or 5. So the first 3 or 4, depending on the timeline you want to use, are formative, coaching the employee to improve and address areas that are identified for improvement. But then there's a summative, which is, I think President Choi acknowledges, it's a time where there's a renewal component to it. So that would be consistent with the language that we use with other academic administrative reviews or administrator reviews.
There is that distinction. Every good evaluation probably has elements of both, as Jim would know. My own hesitancy on using it in this context is sometimes the formative has a stay or go implication to it. And I'm not sure you want to kind of force that when actually you're very happy with the performance.
Doesn't comprehensive really give the breadth? You talk about annual, and then you talk about comprehensive. It seems to me that you capture.
And in the literature, that's the terms that are used, in addition to what Jim said, but that's for this purpose.
And the board can identify the comprehensive nature of that evaluation as well.
Right. And you for the chancellors.
Sure, right.
If we're okay on that, any other comments on that whole section?
Under chancellors, we
Yes.
specifically call out teaching and education, but we don't call out research
Okay.
and engagement. And also, developing and maintaining is just insufficient. We have to be growing
Yeah.
these programs. So some language in there about growing research that has relevance and effective engagement with Missourians, the nation, and the world.
Tying back into the system central themes.
That's good.
Anything else?
Any other thoughts on core values?
On the chancellor's piece on E.
Molly, which one, D?
Chancellor's E is an
Okay.
echo.
Okay.
Adopt a reflective attitude toward their own performance. Don't really know what that means. Maybe the second half of the sentence should just suffice. Seek regular improvement for themselves and the team.
Yeah. It's pretty hard to get inside of somebody's head and decide if they're.
And then under F, is F still, we still using opportunities for rejuvenation, or have we changed that? I know we changed that earlier.
We're going to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Yep, that's out.
I was joking here that it sounds like hormone treatment. Something, so.
Well, sometimes, you know.
All right, help the scrivener here. So on F, are we striking the entire thing, or are we keeping in there some dedication to personal accountability?
Let's strike the entire thing. We struck it from the president. But on E for the chancellors, where it says seek regular improvement for themselves and their team, that should also go under the president too, so.
Yeah.
Well, what are we doing to E under chancellors?
Oh.
I think he was concerned about reflective attitude.
Right. So we're going to
There's
start
a
this.
certain irony in not knowing what reflective attitude
Yeah.
is, but that's okay.
So we're going to start that sentence with seek. Seek
Yeah.
regular improvement.
All right, and then add this, a similar thing to the president.
Yeah, same thing for the president.
Getting better. Yeah, John?
We're ahead of time. I do have a final suggestion here. What are we doing with F under chancellors? Because I'd like to move that up under board.
Repeat that, please.
Under chancellors, F,
F under chancellors.
could we move that up under
No,
board?
we eliminated that.
I'm saying let's move it up under board. A little humor at the end.
Particularly the rejuvenation part.
Why didn't you warn us?
I want to point out some
An
people do
excellent-
humor well and some don't.
An excellent point.
Every 6 years.
All right.
Anything else on this one?
All right.
Okay,
I think, wow.
are we all set? Anybody got any other comments on on core values or the document in general that we just went over, our guiding principles? If not, we will move on to the resolution.
Before we move on, and I should have
Yes.
caught this earlier, if we go back to number four,
Number four.
under collaborative decision-making, for parallel structure purposes, it doesn't follow the pattern of the rest. So if we're suggesting, and really this is Cameron's suggestion, to strike the word informed, or to put in front of informed, enact informed decisions based on collaboratively developed strategic directions and planning.
Are you
Christine?
recommending changes to the title or no? Okay.
Yes, so that it's parallel in structure.
What would the new title recommendation be?
The title's fine. Title's fine.
Title's
Just-
fine?
Title is fine.
Is it the description underneath?
It's just the description
Okay.
underneath that we need to modify so that it's consistent with the others.
And how would you modify it again, Christine? I'm sorry.
So in front of informed, insert enact, informed decisions, and strike and actions. So it'll read enact informed decisions based on collaboratively developed strategic directions and planning.
Have a verb in there instead of.
So the verb is in there to be consistent with the others, to match.
Thank you. Thank you. Okey dokey.
Anything else? Okay, let's move on to the resolution. Is that okay, Terry?
That's okay with me. I just, does anybody want a 5-minute break?
Yeah,
or do
let's
you
do
want
a
to move
5
right on?
5 minute.
I was going to keep everybody here till we have the vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go
Don't
let them think anymore.
Resolution, hot topics after the executive
Hang in
session.
there, Terry, let's get this.
Okay,
Okay,
that's why we got a chairman.
so has everyone had a chance to review the resolution? If not, take a few minutes, take a look at it. Let us know if you have any questions. And in sum, it discusses the work of the task force. It goes over the documents or the guiding principles, the amendments to the collective rules that we did. And it provides Steve, why don't you give a description of the board resolution in sum, since you drafted it initially?
Well, it attempts to the whereas clauses to set kind of a factual underpinning for the resolved clauses. I think most of the whereas clauses are things that either are in existence or were discussed yesterday and this morning. So we begin with the definition of the system or the UM system or the university. We state that we're organized as a system in part to achieve more collectively than our component parts could achieve individually. We remind the reader of the constitutional autonomy of the board and the fact that they've delegated broad authority to the president. We track the development of the task force and what the task force work entailed and the fact that they produced the task force report. And with that, we moved to the resolved clauses where the board reaffirms the value and importance of being organized as one university system, which is what the board passed yesterday in the new one university system rule, and that the governing board is the board for the system in each of the universities. We reaffirm the broad authority delegated to the president, some of which has been discussed today, and all of which is contained in existing CRRs. We approve and adopt the vision statement, and at this point we'll need an amendment because it says, and we also approve and adopt the guidelines and guiding principles for proactive leadership. I think we changed the title of that section, and so we'll need to make that conform to the new title. The board acknowledges the mission statement and directs the president to review it for possible revision. We acknowledge that we have, in paragraph 5, we acknowledge that we have amended 2 pertinent CRRs, and that we continue to look for other CRR revisions to make them consistent with what we've talked about the last 2 days. In 6, we talk about the importance of sound leadership and positive culture to the success of the system, and the board directs the president or his designee to design and promote orientation programs for new leaders and ongoing training for existing leaders. And then the board expresses its appreciation to the task force.
Yeah.
And then the substantive stuff?
Say again?
Would the group like to work its way through the whereases and
Sure,
then
let's-
go to the substance of it?
Can I make a suggestion, if I can, and now I'm getting over into your lane, but maybe it is better, given the short time frame, to ask if anybody has anything they want to discuss and kind of move through it like that, just
Sure.
because if someone's in agreement with the whereas, let's roll and go.
Anything anyone want to discuss?
Sure, I'll lead off. I find myself doing that. And this, you'll see this as sort of continually throughout here. In the first whereas, you get through the part and you get to the next to the last line, and it says, and all of their component parts. I'm not sure that any of the including needs to be there. Because the more you call out things in including, the more you have to go back and include them later, potentially. I mean, 6 months ago, you might not have put UM engagement. And so that, to me, carries down to the 1 and 2 of the now, therefore, be it resolved that, is the governing board for the UM system, period. I mean, we've defined it as, all of those component parts already.
Over here, the first.
I would just take a different view, and I don't have any strong disagreements with any of this, that when you say including, that I think that opens it up. So instead of just the 4 university campuses or universities, and these, and I think that means that others could be later.
Can I ask to do this, because I want to make this clear. This is going to be a vote by the board. We want all input, but my questions as to consensus and changes are going to be strictly to the board. So, I mean, I want to hear, but this is a board resolution.
Maybe it would help you if it said included but not limited.
But not limited to. That's what I was going to suggest.
Superfluous, but that's fine.
And I'll state that I think it's a really good resolution. I'm open to any suggestions for improvement, but I thought it was really well drafted.
Well, David, what I think we're looking for now, does anyone see anything in there, much as Chris has pointed out, that stands out that is unacceptable?
That because we want the input from everybody here, but we're going to have a board vote.
No.
Yeah.
I do, this is Molly here, brought this up with Steve, do seek clarification on item number 2 under the resolution piece, and this is very specific to UMKC. And it's more of a legal clarification, where it's towards the end, it's under number 2, it says, in all advancement programs, since we have a separate 501c3 foundation, the UMKC Foundation, how does that work with that? I'm sure there's a legal answer to that, Steve.
Yeah, I think the president is still in charge of all advancement programs. Obviously, he has some contractual obligations with the UMKC Foundation that he needs to adhere to, but I don't see that this in any way.
It's not in violation of.
Yeah.
The contract is with the corporate body, not the.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the contract is between the curators of the University of Missouri, the legal entity, and the UMKC Foundation.
Continuing?
Can I ask again, just because we got so much to do, because we got some important next steps. Let me ask board members, is there any board member that wishes to offer an amendment to the resolution? Okay. Is there anybody else here who, again, finds anything unacceptable?
And that question is for everybody,
Yeah, that's
not just the
correct.
board.
That's correct.
And I would encourage anybody that thinks they could improve it to speak up, because that's why you're all here. But it sounds like most people are comfortable with it.
Where does this resolution go, or where is it going to be displayed?
This is it. We're going to leave it here. Is it on a website? I had the same question.
What's that?
Is it published on a website?
Yeah, what's going to happen to
All
it?
the toil,
Yeah.
where
It'll
does
be
it lead us?
published on the website. It'll be shared as part of orientation and onboarding.
From now on.
From now on, so that we all recognize what the lines of authorities are going to be and responsibilities. So it'll be widely shared.
My only suggestion would be, and maybe this is inappropriate on this document, but is to somehow just have the mission and vision somewhere on there. That's like, the reason we have this document, the reason we're organized like this is to support this greater mission. Just even if it's a footer at the bottom of the page, because that's why we're doing this. We're just trying to circle back to what we're trying to achieve, and we feel like this is the best way to achieve it.
I think that's good. Why don't I take that as an offer of an amendment and see, Steve, have you got it?
Yes.
Okay.
You'd like the vision, we can't do the mission right now, because the mission is being.
But the vision we could put on there.
The most important person here raised her hand. Cindy?
I mean,
Cindy?
Just a point of clarification. On the first whereas, I was thinking yesterday when we were talking about all their component parts, we added UM system administration
Good point.
as a component part.
Good point.
I'll offer that as an amendment. Consensus? This is not to squelch. If you want to keep going, we can, but I would like to recognize Darrell Chapman for a motion.
So moved. Hold on. I need to, just for clarification, make sure I have the title correct. So the board's going to approve and adopt the vision statement and what used to be called the guidelines and guiding principles. I now understand that we're calling it guiding principles and recommendations for proactive leadership and governance.
I'll offer that as an amendment, too.
Does it start with guiding, or do you want to have recommended? Which was to soften it a little bit. I'm not big on that. I'm just raising it because I thought it was left.
Can I do one little housekeeping thing, and we don't have to call for a vote yet, but I'd like to, I understand, have moved the adoption of the resolution as amended, correct?
Yes, that is the
And
motion.
have I heard a second?
Second.
I have now heard a second. Any more discussion?
Yes. I've raised the question I just raised, and that is, do you want to soften the guidelines by saying recommended guidelines, put a date on it, and it softens it a little bit, or not?
Are you offering that as an amendment?
I'm raising it for discussion. We're having a discussion on a motion.
No, I'm just trying to help Steve here a little bit.
I don't like the idea.
No, I'm not going to raise it in a minute.
I don't like the
If
idea.
there isn't consensus, then I withdraw it.
Hold on, John. I don't like calling them recommended guidelines. They're beyond recommendations now. We've just accepted them.
I withdraw my suggestion and
Okay. Okay, good.
Oh, in favor. Okay, no problem.
Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the question.
Yeah, it's in there.
Somebody Marcy call the question.
Call the question to the board. All in favor of the adoption of the resolution that's before you as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution is adopted. Now, let me say this. I'm going to call for a motion here in a second. Did someone want to applaud? Well, you're going to get applaud again, because before I call, and I have a few other cleanup things at the end of the meeting. We're not done yet. We're coming back. We've got some important first steps to discuss. But before I call for a motion for an executive session, I'm very serious about this. Everybody on the task force has put in a lot of work, but I would be remiss. I don't think any of you realize how hard Curator Chapman has worked on this. I'm not sure we're and I've got more thank yous at the end to the other, but I don't think anyone realizes how hard Daryl has worked. And I want you to imagine having me whispering in your ear about once every 3 days. He has put up with a lot of suffering. So Daryl, you have our deep, deep thanks. And when this university goes forward to becoming the great and preeminent public institution that it will be, maybe not everyone will recognize it, but us here in the room realize that Daryl Chapman will have helped do it. So, and now, a motion for an executive session, an important executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I have to vote on this. Cindy, call the roll.
Curator Burnsick? Yes. Curator Chapman?
Yes.
Curator Farmer?
Yes.
Curator Graham?
Yes.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Curator Sunbolt?
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Now let's take a 10-minute break. I will say, don't anybody leave. We have important work to do. In particular, the executive session will start with just curators, but we will need President Choi and the 4 chancellors probably pretty quickly. So 10-minute break. Cindy, where are we going?
The executive session will be in the Sportsman's Lodge, where we had breakfast.
Okay, now, not to try to be too authoritarian because it's so ineffectual with this group, but let's start in 10 minutes.
And also at 11 o'clock, we're going to go through our next steps and hot topics.
Congratulations.
So, good job. So we got it.